my first job was I used to work in a hotel.
I want to know who is this man sitting right in front of me, Anuj Khanna, as a whole personality.
I'm just an ordinary guy. I'm originally from India, from Mumbai. So my first job was I used to work in a hotel, and I got my work experience there. And I don't know how I moved from hotels into telecommunications, and then into tech and finance. The journey continues from there. I had this interest in terms of technology, startups, and a lot of ambition in terms of working as a consultant for a top company like McKinsey, but they were not having me. So I ended up starting my own consulting firm. And to be honest, I've been working in technology, investments, renewable energy, very honestly by accident, not by some plans.
Hello everyone, I'm your host Rupali Sapkal and welcome to the hashtag show where we bridge the gap between y'all and the leaders of the industry. And today's guest is someone who works at the intersection of strategy, finance and impact with over 25 years of global experience across renewable energy, green finance, infrastructure and of course technology. We have the one and only Anuj Khanna from Peak State Consultancy. A warm welcome to you, Anuj ji.
Thank you, Rupali, for having me and for that very kind introduction.
It's truly an honor to have you, Anuj ji.
Yes, and I'm very happy to be on the hashtag show.
Absolutely, thank you so much. So Anuj ji is all the way from London. So he lives in London and he has his businesses across the globe, and it is such a privilege to have a conversation with you here today. So sir, I want to know who is this man sitting right in front of me, Anuj Khanna, as a whole personality?
Okay, that's quite a difficult question, but it should be very simple as well. But as in, I'm just an ordinary guy, as in, I'm originally from India, from Mumbai, born here. And I had this interest in terms of technology, startups, and a lot of ambition in terms of working as a consultant for a top company like McKinsey, but they were not having me. So I ended up starting my own consulting firm.
Wow.
And to be honest, I've been working in technology, investments, renewable energy, very honestly by accident, not by some plan. So my first job was I used to work in a hotel, and you might be aware it's called the Oberoi Hotels. And I got my work experience there, and I don't know how I moved from hotels into telecommunications, and then into tech and finance, and the journey continues from there. So I would admit that I didn't have any grand vision or plan as a young person to be where I am today, but I think life's just brought me here.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. And as you've mentioned that you worked across finance, energy and technology, what originally pulled you towards this space?
So as in the year 1999, I moved to the UK to pursue my master's degree. I was doing an MBA in marketing from the University of Sheffield. And I happened to meet a few founders who had invented desktop to mobile messaging and sort of mobile email. This is even before the days of BlackBerry. And all these kind of new technical developments always interested me. And my interest more than the technology was how do we get these services and products to market. So I just started speaking with my co-founders, Paul and Hugh, and I should not even call them co-founders because they had not accepted me as yet. But I just started talking with them, and we got along. They were very technical. They were subject matter experts in products. And I had great interest in marketing and business development for getting tech products to market. So that's how I got my first career break. And from there, the journey continued into more sort of world first technology breakthroughs and products all over the different companies I've been working with. And that sort of one thing led to the other. And there's a natural transition right from telecoms into kind of IT, into digital advertising, into payments and fintech. And obviously now we're talking about AI. I'm not doing much in AI, to be honest. But as in renewable energy, it really interests me because renewable energy is not only going to power the fourth or the fifth industrial revolution, which is AI, robotics, etc., but we're going to consume a lot of energy as a society, both on the domestic front and on the industrial front. So that sort of interested me, and I'm working now with the investment firms who have investments in wind, solar, hydrogen, all the different kinds of renewables. And I work and help them in terms of their finance, their business kind of strategy, legal stuff. So that's where I am. But historically, I've got a wide span of technical expertise.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
quite an experience that you have with you, Anuji. I also want to know from you, was there any moment or at any moment in your life that you realized that it's not about building companies, but it is more about shaping the future or shaping the infrastructure? Like what was the thought?
So, as in, I had the privilege of working with some great technical founders and also with investors. And they're all, I would say, dreamers. They want to shape the future. But I think we sometimes look at every kind of startup and say, oh, these guys are going to change the world. But it's not really like that. Most startup founders, technology entrepreneurs, they start with solving a very simple problem and they're obsessed with that problem. So it's
Yes.
not that they just get into something because this is the next big thing or it's going to make them a lot of money. They find a problem which they're obsessed about solving, whether it is, in my experience, desktop to mobile messaging, or it's something to do with wind turbine engineering, or it's something to do with, my clients have been in browsers, in gaming, in financial technology, in payments. And all of them had one thing in common. They were obsessed about solving a customer problem, and they were very passionate about it. The whole point about changing the world, having a grand vision, that steps in a bit much later in my view, and I feel the same about myself as in my career, as in I never really had a very big grand vision about solving any world problems, but as time went along, I had the privilege of working with some of the leading tech founders, top investment firms, private equity companies, and I learned something from them, they learned something from me, and that's how the journeys happened.
Oh wow, it has been quite an incredible journey for you. So that you have your business across North America. I mean, you've expanded in Europe and Asia. So what did the global exposure teach you which the market couldn't, or probably specifically the textbooks couldn't?
Yes, so here again, I'll just like to correct you, as in when I say that we have operations all around the world, we are a advisory strategy consulting company. So we don't necessarily own all those businesses. We are working with investors and founders, and we are solving problems for them in terms of whether it's their go-to-market strategy, or it's their product development strategy, or more importantly, how do they scale up their companies.
Oh, lovely.
So global experience has been very beneficial for me, and there are big differences in terms of markets, and it's not just demographics or the size of the market, but it's totally different product requirements. So I've had the privilege of working with companies across obviously in India, but also done some work in China, in the US, and as in business is more global now. So as in there's no more kind of thinking where you build products only for one market, because you have to think about solving global problems. And a lot of the companies I work with, they started off with one market and then they expanded into many countries.
Oh wow, amazing. So what excites you more, the early stage chaos or the later part?
I would say somewhere in the middle. So there's a lot of focus in the industry in this so-called seed stage startup. And the seed stage startup is one of the most difficult phase for technology companies or for any kind of industry or with a small business. So in this particular stage, normally there is a startup founder who has minimum resources, very few funds, and it's all about their passion, etc. But for me, most of my clients, they are past that stage. They're not necessarily seed stage startups. These are people who have probably been around for a few years. They've crossed the chasm, they crossed few of the hurdles. They now have the funding, they have the resources, and their problems are now the next stage problems, which we call scaling up. How do they go into new markets? How do they grow their product set? How do they acquire and stabilize their customers? And also, more importantly, how do they become profitable? Because in the early stage, it's very difficult to be profitable. And that's where we work with CEOs and investors. and they have a common problem. They all feel very lonely. They have the resources, they have the team, they have the funding, but somehow they're not able to get everything right. And that's where we work with them and try to solve what is that specific problem we can solve for them, whether it's about a product, or it's about the market, or it's about the team, or it's generally scaling up the company. That's where so it's quite simplistic. We don't have any kind of a complicated offering as a consulting company, as an advisory company. We are normally working with companies or investors who have a set or a portfolio of companies and they want to grow them, and we help them solve the problems.
Oh wow, amazing. And I also want to know how real is the global energy transition right now?
So it is very real, in spite of the politics behind it. As in, so oil and gas are here to stay. The
Yeah.
traditional resources are here to stay for a long time. So, there is one group of so-called type of environmentalist campaigners or cheerleaders who would say, "Oh no, we need to get rid of oil and gas completely." That's not going to happen. It's going to be a transition. So the transition is real. But there are many countries across the world which are now reaching 40% or 50% energy through renewable resources.
Yes.
So the electrification of the kind of whole industrial setup is happening. It is, I would say, I won't call it a slow transition, but it's a gradual transition. So it is very real. So like where we come out from in the UK, we work with companies in our portfolio who are into wind energy, hydrogen, battery storage, solar. And as I said, in the UK, it's about 40% of all energy needs are serviced by renewables. In a large country with big demographics and demand like India, the transition might be have a longer journey, but it is very real. And when we look forward into the future, it's going to be all about renewables, and even the renewable energy sources we are working with today, they might become redundant, and we might find even more efficient, more greener resources. But I'm not predicting the future, but it's real world. There's no, there's nobody who can deny it. Though we have a lot of political rhetoric around the world, which is, in favor of gas and oil.
Yeah.
But I think it will be short-lived. Even the people who are with that rhetoric,
Yes.
deep inside, they know the future is going to be electric.
I'm sure, I'm sure. So what's moving faster, technology, capital, or regulation?
Regulation is definitely not moving faster. So, and I think it's probably a good thing that the regulation doesn't move faster, because it kills innovation. Technology is moving fast.
Yeah.
Finance always moves fast, so
Yeah.
it's very dynamic, and it also moves in and it moves out fast as well. So, so I would say generally people have accepted this whole concept of AI, automation, renewable energy, and all the kind of infrastructure which would be required over the next 20, 30 years.
Yes.
Only thing is that it will take time. For example, what we are seeing in AI, it's only the first version of AI. So people are using ChatGPT, etc. So you can compare it to using your internet in year 1999 or 2000. So you can't make a judgment saying, oh, this is how AI will perform, or this is how it will help. Though it's moving very quickly, I'm saying we're in very early days of all the different kind of technologies which we are looking at, and 5, 10, 15 years down the line, it will be completely different. It will be much more kind of advanced, settled, and regulated, because you asked about regulation.
Absolutely. And so where do things actually break down? Battery storage, hydrogen, green data centers?
Okay, so I don't know what you mean by breakdown, as in things are not really going. I think things are quite sort of, from a technology perspective, things are quite well settled there. They're growing. Battery storage is fairly new, but other renewable resources like wind energy, solar energy is well established, and it's very well established in India itself, as in, you're aware of some of the largest solar plants by the Adani Group,
Yes,
etc.
but there are a lot of renewable and infrastructure projects, right? Despite of funding, it's still failing. So,
So, it's a demand and supply thing. So, I don't think that they are failing generally.
Yeah.
But there is like, okay, if you are trying to over develop infrastructure, like for example, for battery storage sites, if you're going to have 20, 30, 40 battery storage site in one geographic cluster, and you don't have enough consumers, whether they're industrial or, individuals in that region, then it's going to fail. So there's obviously going to be an oversupply. But I think the investors are very clever. They know where they're investing. And I don't generally agree that renewable energy investments or projects are failing. There could be some certain examples where they've been a bit too early for their time, or there was not planning, or there was a little initial hype. But there is a huge demand because of all the different data centers. Everybody requires industrial automation in their warehouses. Everybody requires AI to power their systems, etc., or they will require. And even without AI, the data requirements, you can look at how you use your phone, as in
Yes.
the amount of data you consume on it, the data being consumed over the OTT platforms or the web, and overall. So the demand for energy is just increasing. It's going to go through the roof. But yeah, there would be odd cases where there's an oversupply, or there's been bad planning, I would say. But wherever, as in our experience, there is, I would say, where the problem is in this is the grid capacity. The grid needs to be upgraded to accommodate all this new kind of sources of energy coming in, and it's not India problem or a UK problem, it's a global problem. So, all industrial infrastructure, all energy infrastructure is going to be in a cycle of continuous improvement. So we'll have the next kind of generation of infrastructure available with that.
oh, amazing, amazing. And you've worked closely with venture capital, private equity,
Sure.
and debt funds. What's the biggest misunderstanding founders have about raising capital?
I think it depends on what stage company they are operating in. I see that in early stage financing, I think the misunderstanding is that they will get the funding and then magic will happen, and then they'll get the next round of funding and the next round of funding. And I would say in the early stage capital, there's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of failure, which is accepted because 9 out of 10 startups fail, and startup founders have to work with sort of very limited resources. So I think sort of misunderstanding from the entrepreneur perspective is that there'll be a continuous supply of funding and resources, irrespective whether they are successful, irrespective whether they acquire customers. That's probably sometimes there's a friction between the investor and the founder. The investor's looking for proof of traction and moving, and the early stage founder saying, no, we need more resources, more funding.
Yeah.
So that's where the sort of misunderstanding lies sometimes. And I would say in the mid-sized companies, when people have crossed all these hurdles, then it's just a question of building trust with the investors, because the investors normally are going to invest themselves, or they're able to get other co-investors, whether it's a venture capital or private equity fund, or it's a debt fund. They're very happy because they are already invested in a company which has been there for a few years. The capital, the valuation is high. So the investors definitely don't want these companies to fail. But the founders, they also need to realize that they need to be profitable. They need to have good corporate governance and reporting, and they need to build trust with the investors. So the more information, the more trust there is with the investor, the more opportunity to grow and scale up the business.
Oh, lovely. And I also want to know, how important is governance and board thinking? Like, even at the early stages, I'm sure like there would be.
I think in the companies where, like for example, where I'm a board member or advisor, we don't really interfere too much in terms of day-to-day decision making of the companies we are working with, because we have subject matter experts who have received the investment, or our investors have invested in them. I think where we come in terms of governance is that we expect founders to have a long-term vision, but we also want them to adapt because we live in the real world, and as their financial or the market requirements change, how regulatory environment changes, that they are able to adapt. So I think where corporate governance or kind of a board level thinking helps in is actually shaping up a long term plan and strategy and having some accountability on a quarterly or a monthly basis to make sure that those vision of the company is achieved. So that's where I think, as definitely board members or external kind of advisors, they're not in to interfere or stop company founders from following their own strategy. It's just we are sort of kind of here to assist them in being successful.
Wow.
With their kind permission, obviously.
Amazing, amazing. That's very like intense and very informative about it. So you founded Peak State Consulting to work across strategy, finance, and execution. What gap were you trying to solve?
So initially, when I started my consulting company, I had like a grand vision that I'm going to be sitting with investors and strategies. I'm going to be having sort of brainstorming sessions, and we're going to form strategy. But very soon, initial clients we signed up with, they were CEOs and investors, basically funds and technology founders. It became very clear to me that they always wanted me to solve or wanted our company to solve a very specific problem. And they were very much initial meeting, as in we would just throw all that strategy and the kind of reporting we wanted, etc. So we were not in the business of impressing each other or trying to build something big. But then the problem we were solving was that most of these founders and investors, they felt they had a good team, they had their finance, they had resources, everything. But in spite of having everything, they were unable to achieve a particular objective, whether it was in a product area or whether it was in entering a new market or it was scaling up their company. And they very specifically briefed us or briefed me saying, we want to achieve X, we want to be in X country, a number of countries in this many years, we want our revenue or profitability to grow in this way. And we would specifically work on those areas.
Wow.
And that's where we were different from some of the other companies, because some strategy consulting companies want very big projects, like we're talking about, you have a big Accenture or Deloitte, you have a big budget and you have long-term objectives, etc. And then there are also companies who are like subject matter experts in a particular technical area. But for us, it was mainly all our clients had one problem. It was about scaling up their technology company. And that's where we went and helped. We provided a kind of marketing, business development, and financial expertise working with them.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's absolutely wonderful. So, what's that one leadership lesson if you had to give, from your own life experience to
Right.
the budding entrepreneurs?
Okay, I'll be humble. As in, I don't think I can give everybody is quite capable themselves. But I think I would say kind of main leadership suggestion I would say I would give to anybody is that if you're trying to achieve anything in terms of whether you're working in the technology industry or you're in retail or I don't know, you're in the media industry, any kind of business you're trying to build, it's good to have a long-term vision and strategy about your business, generic as it may sound, because a lot of people get distracted. They start something and 6 months later somebody comes and tells them something, somebody else gives them another suggestion. Somebody just says, why don't you put AI in your product? And they get distracted. And as soon as they get distracted, that's where the sort of downfall comes in. And I've noticed that most entrepreneurs, they're quite married to the vision. They have a long-term plan and they're very calm. Now, I'm going to give some contrary advice to what I've already said. So now, though you need to have a long-term vision and strategy, I think the most successful leaders are able to adapt and change. And business is not a smooth sailing work. If you can't handle stress, if you can't handle changes, if you can't handle financial pressure, if you're not good with people, then business is not for you, entrepreneurship is not for you. It's probably, you might be if you're a creative person or you're a subject matter expert, etc., you might be better off in a job and you might have a better career and work-life balance there. But definitely for leadership, for growing businesses, you need to, along with the long-term vision, you need to be completely flexible, able to adapt, a good listener, a good people's person. Business is a contact sport. You play, I don't know, if you do martial arts, you're doing boxing or karate, you can't play it without touching each other. So, so the same thing is business. You're dealing with people, you have many touch points, whether it's your customers, whether your employees, etc. If you are the kind of person saying, oh, I can't be bothered, or I can't deal with this person, then, definitely not. So, main leadership qualities are people skills, adaptability, stability, and good sort of mental health and positive attitude. That's all I'll say. These all suggestions sound very generic, but that's the truth.
But that's very important. I think that's how it's all about following certain basics to achieve success.
Sure, yeah. And I've seen on the opposite side that there are people who are sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, who are obsessed, or they are subject matter technical experts. They are another category of entrepreneurs who are successful as well. So it's not necessarily everybody needs to have people skills. But if you don't have people skill and you're a great technical person or you're a great creative person, do have a co-founder or a partner who's good in finance or marketing or business, etc. That adds up.
Amazing.
Or you can hire us as in a strategy consultant.
Absolutely.
We can fill in the gaps.
Absolutely. So Anuj, I also want to know that what kind of people you're working with, what kind of clientele you have, and the projects that you're working upon.
Okay, thank you for asking me that question. I'm going to put a little bit of a pitch of what I'm doing currently.
Okay.
So initially, we work with all the large sort of telecoms and digital and advertising and payment companies over the years, financial technology. And more recently, we have now more working with renewable energy technology companies. And like some of the companies I'm working with are in wind energy. So these are guys who actually go and install, repair, maintain wind infrastructure. Then we work also with battery storage. So these are all in the renewable energy sector. But increasingly, we have inquiries also from data centers, people who want to get into AI. So there's a lot of hype about AI. Not that we are AI subject matter experts, but we are assisting people. People looking at what is going to happen next 20 years, 30 years. Wow. And whenever there is a new kind of transition in terms of technology or basically infrastructure, that's where the challenges come in for companies. So if you speak to any chief information officer, chief technology officer, CEO, they say, oh, I want to use AI, I want to use tech, I want all ESG, I want renewable energy. Then I'll say, okay, what do you want to do in it? Or how much budget can you allocate to it? The answer is the budget is this small and the ambition is this big. Yes. And the actual application into individual, what exactly will you do with your product, is something which is unknown. Yeah. So that is both an opportunity and a challenge. And I think some of the clients we're working with right now, they are now have ideas in terms of this whole transition into the next phase of this kind of industrial, autonomous, digital world. And so we're getting more kind of inquiries, and we're getting more clients signing up in this kind of area.
Wow, that's nice. So according to you, so like nowadays, I think anxiety and depression is like common symptoms, to a lot of people. So according to you, what is long-term success?
Okay, so I'll move on from the business and technology and finance kind of stuff we have been discussing. Yes. And I think long-term success, I'm not going to speak about the business context, is a very simple concept that whatever a person is doing, they should be at peace with themselves. True. And success can be defined in being happy, being peaceful, and having a sense of calm. For me personally, that's what I would define success as, because anybody who puts in a specific number or a target as a success. As soon as they achieve that, they get bored. Some of them might get depressed, I don't know, but some of them might be happy as well. But they just say, okay, oh, what next? Then they start going for the next kind of thing.
Yeah.
So strangely, our company name is also called Peak State, and it comes from the concept of having a peak psychological state.
Wow.
So I would, my view is that success is something which is not where you arrive. It's more about something like a feeling which you can feel every day.
Yeah.
Or any time when you're happy with yourself and you achieve. So I think, when you talk about depression, anxiety, mental health issues, whether it's with the entrepreneurs or with young people, etc., because there's a lot of pressure from, many different channels in society, or some blame social media as well, but it's got its uses. But it's generally that people are trying to define a very, 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 very high standard or objective for themselves, which may take a long time to achieve, may be unachievable, maybe even not relevant to them. And I think that's where I would say that's what causes issues. And in my view, as in, a long-term success or short-term success is basically just being happy and being at peace with yourself.
Wow, that's so true. I mean, it's all about whatever makes peace. First is, like your mind being calm and understanding and absorbing. So I think it was really a great conversation with you, Anuj. We got to learn such important insights about industry and about how a leader should be. Thank you so much for taking out your valuable time.
Thank you, Rupali, and thank you, the hashtag show, as in what are we going to do, but thanks for having me here.
Yeah, and the hashtag show truly stand for the same. It's all about real stories, real conversation, and real skills that you have. Thank you so much once again.
Rupali, very much.
Thank you, Anuj. Thank you.